Welcome friends to Canal Tornillo. Today we are going to change the digitizer of an iPod Nano 7G. An operation not suitable for people with pulse problems and, well, not suitable for most people. We are going to show you step by step how to do it, all the problems that may appear and all the details that must be kept in mind to perform this operation, which is practically neurosurgery. So, guys, this is
Canal Tornillo.
Here we are on the operating table. First of all, we are going to ask the iPod for permission to open it. Please open up. Don't resist and don't give us trouble. We begin by softening the glue that holds this white cap. 100 degrees for 1 minute is enough. You can use a heat gun or a blow dryer. Don't give it too much heat for too long time because it could deform. When the glue begins to be tender, you insert a gauge by one edge, being careful not to mark the aluminum. When the piece rises, don't pull it. The Bluetooth antenna is attached to it and you should check that it separates completely so as not break it. We remove the screw that holds the antenna and move it aside to gain access to the screws that hold the screen. With the same screwdriver, we remove these screws and, preferably, we don't lose them. There are no screws anymore, but the screen is still glued to the chassis. With a little more heat, we soften this glue. With the heat, you have to be firm but careful. We hit the entire perimeter and the sides of the home button. While you warm up, you are pushing the screen chassis from the antenna hole. Heat, push, the bottom of the iPod will lift up. They will also raise the sides. Don't push too hard. With care and patience. It's a delicate moment where you can cause irreversible aesthetic or physical damage. We take a fine gauge and insert it between the digitizer and the chassis. The center of the gauge should roughly fit the black corner of the screen. You should leverage there and on the other side. Giving a little more of heat if necessary, insert the gauge in that corner, or perhaps a little higher, and little by little lift the lower part of the screen. Insert the gauge in the upper half of the edges or at the top of the screen. This piece is inserted in a wedge under the chassis, and if you force this area, you will break the screen. Don't ask me how I know. When the sides are raised, hold with the fingers, move to the sides gently and little by little pull down the wool. Congratulations on getting here, but be careful and don't pull the set. This piece is soldered by 3 flex cables to the motherboard. These 3 cables correspond to the battery, the screen and the digitizer. These last 2 have connectors that are easy to disconnect. With a plastic tool and a little care, disconnect these cables. Don't use metal tools as it may cause a short circuit as the battery is still connected. Once we open this book, we see that the battery is soldered to the board. Soldered and not with little cables, but with a flex cable with 3 terminals: positive, negative and temperature sensor. To work comfortably, it is best to unsolder the battery. With a little bit of flux in the terminals and with the soldering iron, we are releasing point by point. The tip of the soldering iron is metal and the battery is still soldered to the motherboard. Be careful not to touch the positive and negative terminals with the tip of the soldering iron and make a short, because you can damage the board. To facilitate the operation, you can remove the excess tin with a desoldering mesh, but be careful with making a bridge between terminals. Now, next step, detach the digitizer from the screen chassis. Apply heat and introduce a plastic spike between the digitizer and the chassis, levering upwards to avoid touching the screen. In the part that surrounds the home button, the digitizer is firmly glued to the chassis. With a gauge and heat, gradually take off this area, taking care not to cut the flex of the screen. This way we can separate the two parts without damaging or staining the screen. The new digitizer comes without the home button, so we will have to remove it from the broken digitizer. It's a delicate process because the home button is a piece of plastic that rests on a flexible membrane that allows it to move. We must give a little heat and with a needle take off the perimeter of this membrane very carefully, since we are going to use it again. Once we remove the button, we must take off the key that is still attached to it. With a needle we separate it, remove the button, and just as we take it, we mount it directly on the new digitizer. The glue that remains on the membrane keeps it in place. And now, another fun moment. The flex cable of the new digitizer comes completely flat, but you have to do a bit of origami. First, you have to place the key on the home button by bending it 180 degrees. The key must be glued with double-sided tape if the key doesn't already come with adhesive. Then we will have to make 3 folds in the flex cable. I recommend you that study in deep how the original cable comes to be clear about how these folds are. This is not paper, it's a delicate electronic cable. The folds are not to be edges. They are curves to direct the cable towards the connectors. Do not press the bends or you may damage the cable. Remember, a sharp curve, not an edge. Now we take the screen, clean it well if we have left dirt, and begin to place double-sided tape around the perimeter. The entire chassis has double-sided tape to hold the digitizer, a little on the sides, at the top of the chassis and below, on both sides of the button. In the area where the home button supports, you don't have to put tape. We take the new digitizer, remove the inner protective plastic and insert the flex cable through the hole in the screen support. Be careful not to press this cable when permanently attaching the digitizer to the chassis. We do a little pressure around the perimeter and in the lower part to ensure the union between these pieces. Now we must solder the battery with the same precautions that we had when removing it. Do not bridge between terminals. Connect the connectors of the screen and digitizer and connect the power to the iPod to test it. The best way to test if the digitizer works correctly is to press long on an icon to enter the function of moving icons. Click on an icon and move it slowly around the perimeter of the screen. Change the desktop, move it quickly. If at all times the icon remains under the finger, the work has been a success. On the other hand, if the icon leaves our finger and returns to original position or the movement is unstable, something bad has happened. Most likely, when making the folds, the union between the digitizer and the flex cable has been damaged and the digitizer doesn't work correctly. If everything works, we should gently insert the assembly into the iPod chassis. Don't press too hard or we may damage the digitizer or the screen. It should enter firm but smooth. I use some mobile glue to fix the whole set to the chassis. A little on the sides of the button and a little on the sides of the screen. Little to avoid that the glue gets to stain the screen. Put the screws to hold both chassis together and screw the Bluetooth antenna in place. Put a couple of drops of mobile glue and put the lid on. With this glue, the lid is much better integrated than with double set tape. Finally, place the iPod on a smooth surface, put weight on it and let the glue cure for 24 hours so that the joints are firm. Why would they have made it so darn small? Anyway, I hope it has become clear to you how to change this delicate piece. Be careful with the glues, be careful with pulling the pieces because they can come loose suddenly and break things. Be careful with shorting between the battery terminals. Be careful with everything because this is a delicate job and you have to have a lot of repairing art. I hope you have understood everything and if you try it, please let me know how it went. You can follow me on social networks and Patreon. On Twitch, on Fridays, I do a streaming repairing things and on Saturdays, I chatting about the world in general. So, boys, girls, friends, iPods, see you in the next video.